I had a over 100-year-old grinding wheel that was my dad's, and it was in a million pieces. I made a video a few months ago on rebuilding it to get it back to where it would at least turn and rotate on bearings, and replace some of the split and ruined parts, and had always planned on hooking it up to some kind of a treadle for treadle power. And that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to take this half-finished grinding wheel and try to hook up a treadle to be something like this illustration. The legs on this thing are at a taper, so the first thing I had to do is measure that taper angle and build a block so that my treadle axle, so to speak, would be perpendicular with the floor and the treadle would sit level. So I drilled out one of the legs and cut a block out of a piece of hard maple and bolted it to the leg. On my first try, for some reason, I attached the treadle to a back leg, thinking, having seen some treadle-powered grinding wheels on the web, it looked like a good way to go. And so I put this pedal together using the back leg, and with the idea that it would pivot on the back leg and you'd push the treadle pedal up and down in the front. I just did kind of a makeshift connecting rod, basically a thin piece of wood with a hole in it and another thicker piece of wood with a hole in it to act as my pedal, and just simply slid that pedal onto that extended bolt, screwed the connecting rod to the side of that pedal and looped it over the pipe handle. And you can see it worked, sort of. But the downside of this is you really have to work your foot up and down to make this thing work. And I thought, it's a lot better to just be able to tip your foot at the ankle. And so I ended up scrapping this idea and going for pivoting on the front leg. Also notice that with foot power, you tend to have a lot of torque, and the torque ended up being a problem in that the crank would slip on the wheel. When you torque down on it with your foot, you're pushing, fairly hard, and you're pushing maybe a little bit abruptly, and I found that it was slipping on the wheel. So I not only fixed that slippage problem, I changed the pivot point of the pedal from the back of the A-frame to the front so that it would be more of a tipping of your foot rather than a raising up and down of your leg and knee. And in doing so, I had to take that little block and reduce its width. So I just took it back off the wheel, ripped it down on my table saw to make it a little bit narrower, re-drilled now the front leg instead of the back leg, and used that same 3/8 inch threaded rod, same bolt, same everything, with a little bit thinner wedge to support the pedal, and didn't have to change much other than that. This allowed the axle, or the pivot point, to go further into the pedal. In fact, it's long enough now that I will be able to drill out the pedal and bolt it on both sides. And now just with the tip of the foot, you get really good action out of the grinding wheel. So the last thing I had to do now is fix that torque problem, that slippage problem between the main axle of the wheel and the wheel itself. And that was not that hard to do, because in the center of the wheel, if you recall from the first video, is a square block of wood. So the square block of wood will not turn on the wheel, but it will turn on the axle. So I simply pulled the wheel apart. I pulled the axle out. I pulled the bearing off. I pulled that guide portion that I'd turned on the lathe off. I pulled the square block out of the wheel and I pinned it to the axle with an 1/8 inch steel pin. Put it all back together, and now the crank and or the axle are really solidly connected to the wheel, and it works like a charm. It spins very easily. It's just a slight tip of the foot to get it going. I even tried it sharpening a knife. You can see the wheel still needs to be a little bit of have a little bit of dressing. It needs to be rounded better, but it works like a charm. Just tipping my foot. This is just a very quick quick test just to see how well it worked, and I'm pretty happy with it. So there is video number 2 of the rebuild of the 100-year-old grinding wheel with treadle power. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, please subscribe. Thanks again for watching.